moisture or it does something, but it just doesn't work out as well. What I find is that my batter ends up being too thick all of the time, so I just use 10X, so I'm not going to worry about it. I also use fresh egg whites because they have a higher concentration of protein, whip a little better, they just work a little nicer. With all of the stuff they put in the egg whites, the guar gum and the carrageenan and all those stabilizers and stuff, they just sort of screw up the macarons, so I use fresh egg whites. I also separate my egg whites a couple days in advance and let them kind of sit. Aging egg whites is actually a common practice, especially in Europe. They'll actually separate fresh eggs and leave the egg whites out open to the air at room temperature for a couple days, which sounds skeevy if you think about it, because you're like, ooh, bacteria and stuff, but apparently it's not a big deal. But here, we can't do that, so I at least just crack them in advance and let them sit in the container. That's as best as I can do, and I put them in the fridge. So, you have two separate measurements of egg whites. One's going to be turned into an Italian meringue, the other one's going to be part of the mixed paste. This is a very common macaron method. I mean, if you've had Chef Lumi, you've done it almost exactly the way I'm going to do it. If you've had Chef Brown, I feel like it's almost the same. Some people use a common meringue, some people use an Italian meringue. I use an Italian meringue. I'm half Italian, so that's fine. That's the way I learned, so that's the way I'm going to do it. But you'll find lots of different recipes. I think this one's probably been my tried and true for the last 10 years, so we'll see how we do. The first thing you want to start is actually the syrup for the Italian meringue. This takes a long time. So you have most of your granulated sugar here. I took out a very, very small portion, just put it in a little cup. I'm going to use that to start my egg whites whipping. It's just a little better to have a common meringue to add your syrup to as opposed to just whites. So I'm going to leave a little bit aside. There's no measured amount, maybe 25-50 grams. And then the rest is just going to go into this small pot. I know that when you guys were in sugars class, you learned a whole method of how to brush down the side of the pot and do all this stuff when you were cooking sugar. And for sugar syrups, when you have to cook that high and for pulling and pouring and such, that's very important. The way I'm going to do it is a little different. I have a measured amount of water here. Oftentimes it doesn't matter how much water you put into your sugar because as you cook up in temperature, the amount of water decreases, and at 250 degrees, the amount of water is the same in any pot of sugar you do when you, like even if I put like a drop versus like an ounce, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So usually it's not a big deal, but for macarons, being as finicky as they tend to be, I like to measure my water just to like eliminate any possibility that that matters. I don't think it matters, but then other chefs have this other thing, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to reduce, you know, like when you're doing tests and stuff, you reduce the amount of variables you have, and then your stuff will come nice. So I'm trying to be as consistent as I can. So I have a measured amount of water here, and I'm just going to pour it all over the pot, trying to get all the sugar wet without me having to go in and mix it by hand. All right, the more I agitate it, the more I have chances of getting sugar crystals on the side of the pot and stuff. I don't want to do that. So at the end of the day, you have wet sugar with water sitting on top. No crystals on the side or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this on the stove. And I'm going to cook it fast and hot, so you don't be afraid. Just go like all the way up to 50 if you want, or higher, as long as you're keeping an eye on it. You're fine. So while that's cooking, the rest of my 1/2 of my egg whites is going to go into the mixing bowl. And I will put, I think I put a little much, so I'm just going to put like half in there. I'll sprinkle the rest in as we go. I have candy thermometers for you guys to use because they're super accurate. You do have to learn how to read them. You're going to go up to 245. On this thermometer, ironically enough, from 220 to 280 is not marked, which is sort of irritating. So you have to kind of count the little lines. If you look at where it says soft ball on the thermometer, you go up to the top of the T, that's pretty much where you need to be. So I'm going to put this in a little later. Once it starts to boil, I'll put the thermometer in. I'll worry about it. Quickly, I have double pan, okay? Flat as you can find, all right? If the bottom one's not as flat as the top, that's okay. Just get like the one that you're going to pipe on to be the flattest. And you're going to do this. And I know a lot of chefs will do sill pads. You'll have seen macarons piped on sill pads. In my lecture slides, you'll see piped on sill pads. I don't like to do that. I find that I have a hard time drying out the bottom with sill pads, so I use parchment, and I mean that's just preference. What I do to make sure that the parchment doesn't wrinkle, because sometimes you get cheap parchment, and as soon as it hits moisture, it starts to wrinkle, is I use a teeny tiny bit of pan spray. Now, pan spray is generally an enemy of macarons. Any fat besides the almond meal that's in there that you put into your macaron batter is going to make it fail. So we need to make sure we don't get this everywhere. So you just lightly spray, as I say that, just a little bit. So I pan sprayed that, and I'm just going to take a piece of parchment, lay it down very gently on top of the spray. Take something flat, like a bowl scraper, and sort of kind of force out the wrinkles if you can. So this is ready. That's working. Just gotta keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't go faster than you want it to. So I'm gonna deal with this. All right, I have my sifted dry, so my 10x and my almond meal / almond flour, same thing, and the egg whites. I'm just gonna toss all that in. I'm also gonna start to add a little bit of food coloring now. I'm gonna color this like a darker green, because when I add my meringue, it's gonna lighten, and I want them to be a nice green color when I'm done. Maybe a little darker than what you guys have on your colors. If you want to do yellow, you can do yellow too. And again, you're just gonna color this batter a little darker than what you would want, so that your meringue doesn't lighten it too much. All right, and I know that it's gonna take a decent amount of coloring, so I'm gonna add some right in the beginning, so I don't have to waste time mixing. This coloring has no fat in it. It's water-based or glycerin-based, or not glycerin, sorry, non-glycerin-based. Glycerin is fat. So as long as you read your labels with your food colorings, like any kind of gel paste is usually fine, but just double check, make sure that your labels don't say anything like fat-based glycerin or anything like that as you make macarons, because you end up with a messy mess. So I'm going to do this by hand. It's the easiest thing. I just kind of go in there and start squishing. It's not pleasant at first. And while so it's a pretty thick paste, so it won't feel like it's going to come together at first, but just keep working at it, and it will. You can also do this on a mixer with paddle, but I find it just as easy to go like this. It only takes a minute, and you have time to kill while your meringue is working. Yeah, most of the coloring with my hand. Will almost turn into a dough that you can kind of pick up and knead, but it's a little stickier than that. Towards the end, if you want to grab like a bowl scraper or something, just to make sure that you're getting all of that mix off the bottom of the bowl and mixing it into your mass. All right, now looking at this, I know it's mixed because all my dry ingredients are all disappeared and they're nice and pasty. Clearly my color's not mixed in yet, but at the end of the day, I gotta mix it with the meringue in it too. So like, as long as you know that the coloring is correct, you don't have to worry about streaks. I do think I want to put a little more coloring in. It is not quite dark enough. My sugar is about 10 degrees away from being ready. This is where I end up turning myself really good. Today's a very colorful day, working with food coloring and also cocoa butter coloring, so it's going to be colorful. I'll just leave that there and I'll mix it when I put my meringue. You're also going to have a bag with an 802 tip, all right, to work with. When you hit 220, you need to start your common meringue, okay? I'm going to start it on speed 3 because I'm a little behind the 8 ball. So you can start it on speed 3 or you can start on speed 2, whatever works, as long as your meringue is ready when your syrup is, right? No over whipping the meringue, you know, letting it sit there and not whipping. So kind of play with the speed as you need to. Keep checking your sugar. When you're sprinkling sugar in, it's kind of not good to do it on any high, like ridiculously high speed. So I'll just turn it down for this last little sugar. You can also play with your burners. These burners are so sensitive that, like, if you want it to slow down for a minute, you just turn down the heat real quick. And if you want it to speed up, turn it back up. They go quick. So you should be able to control it that way. So I can, I'm going to blast this up a little higher for a minute. I want it to be a nice medium peak meringue when you're adding your sugar syrup. So don't be afraid to get it to almost what you would use for like any recipe, but not too stiff. When you guys are done with these thermometers, you're going to do this, tap, 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 and then you're going to put them back in this pitcher. I'm going to fill it with warm water, and that's how we're going to wash them. So, swirl it around a little if you like. I usually just tend to start pouring. Hang the lip right over the bowl and dribble that sugar syrup right down the edge of your bowl. That's going to get the sugar syrup into the bowl without hitting the whip. You just know how hard it is, right, to aim properly. And when you have such a small amount of meringue in there, as we do, it gets even harder. So just dribble it down the side of the bowl. That won't hit the whip and make a spider web, but it will get in the bowl. You have to go slow at first because these are fresh egg whites. They do not have the same, I would say, temperature state. Like, you know how sometimes with the yolks, like I said, you can sort of temper without the sugar and it's not a big deal. Well, fresh eggs are a little less, they're a little more sensitive. I remember I was working at I was doing a bench test for a job, and the last job I was at, they used only container eggs. So like egg beaters, basically. And then I went to this new place and they were using all fresh eggs. And so I was like, oh, I can make pastry cream, no problem. And then I totally curdled the crap out of it because I forgot that container eggs are a little more temperature stable than fresh eggs, and I was really embarrassed. But I still got the job. So it's funny. I like screwed up everything I touched that day. I still got that job, and I was like, man, it's harder to make. So get as much of that syrup in there as you can. Then you just fill this up with water and boil it out so it doesn't become a mess to clean. And I'm just going to let this go for a minute or two. You don't really need to cool it down. That's not the idea. The idea is to get it to like a sort of glossy, not too stiff, but not too soupy mix. Alright, the soupier the mix, the harder it is to control your batter. The stiffer the mix, the harder it is to fold it to the right consistency. So you kind of have to catch it somewhere in the middle. So usually I say, as long as you can touch the bottom of the bowl without hurting yourself, you should be ready. I'm almost there. So looking at this meringue, it's definitely, I wouldn't call it stiff peak, right? There we go. This is the one used for medium peak meringue. And it's not, you know, it's nice and glossy. And this is the one instance in my whole entire life, maybe not the one, but that I'm going to add the meringue little by little, because this is really stiff and that is really light, and the two will not go together nicely if you don't start it slow. So maybe 3, maybe 4 additions. You start with a small amount of the meringue. And again, just squish it with your hands. It's not a big fancy technique. Just get it done. Are you guys familiar with French macarons a little bit? Made them before? How many of you have made them successfully before? That's good. The ratio gets higher and higher every time I ask. I feel like they're a finicky thing. When I was working at the Taj, I never had a problem. I was like, oh, it's fine. And then I came here and I tried to teach it. It was like an utter failure. I was like, but your ingredients, your ovens, and your room temperature and everything makes a difference. So I'm going to go with a little more of this. And then I'll just do the last bit of the batter. A little bit of sugar buildup on the bottom of the bowl, not too much, but just a little, okay? Life goes on. If you do end up with a little sugar buildup at the bottom of the bowl, don't try and scrape it out. It's not going to help your macarons at all. And you don't really need to fold it like you're folding a mousse. It's not the idea. I mean, it's easy to combine that way, but you're not really looking to like save volume. You're just looking to mix the batter together and to create a smooth mass. So however you have to do it to do that. Now ideally, when you're done adding all of your meringue, your batter looks something like this, if not a little bit softer. If it's too soft when you add your last bit of meringue, that's usually because your meringue wasn't whipped enough. So what I have to do now is I have to beat this to the point of submission. And it'll take longer or shorter depending on the consistency you start with. But you want to make sure that your macaron batter has a certain sheen to it when it's dropped. So you mix it up, and then you pick it up, and you drop it. And you watch it. Does it settle out to a smooth mass? How long does it take? Will it ever get there? I think this is a little stiff, so I'm just going to beat it a tiny bit more. But it's almost there. So watching this, I'm pretty confident that as I pipe, I'll be able to pipe little discs, and that eventually as they sit, they'll smooth out to a nice, beautiful, flat, smooth disc with no piping marks, tips, or anything like that. All right, so that's what you're looking for. So as you guys are mixing yours, ask me, is this right? Should I mix more? That's always the hardest part, I think, in the visual, is making sure you don't either overmix or undermixing is usually more common than overmixing. Okay, so once you are there, you're going to load up your pastry bag, and you guys are making the same size batch that I am for 2 people, and we need maybe like 12 macarons. We don't need very many at all. So what I'm going to have you guys do is take 1 sheet pan between the 2 of you and pipe as many as you can manage on your half. Right? So each of you should pipe your own. And then whatever extra batter you have, I want 1/2 sheet pan of yellow, and I want 1/2 sheet pan of green. I don't care which team does it, whoever has extra, whoever's fastest, whatever, of larger macarons, about yay, quarter, a little bit $1/2 size, about 1 inch in diameter. Those will be an optional garnish on the passion fruit parfait. You may or may not use them depending on how you feel, but it's nice to have a couple as an option. Okay? But I don't want you guys to all pipe all of your macaron batter because I will end up in the other kitchen for about 3 hours making them all, because it takes forever. So I just want 1 sheet pan per team of 2 of the smaller ones that I'm going to show you, and then at least 1/2 of green and 1/2 of yellow from whoever. All right? The key to successful macaron piping is the angle of your piping bed. So I'm going to pipe a little bit on each corner. That helps with convection oven, because the convection oven has lots of air circulation, that the paper doesn't fly around by accident. So from here, you want to pipe, and what I do is I pipe straight up and down. I hover about 1/2 inch from the pan, pipe the batter out, stop the pressure, cut the tip, and move on. All right, so it's pretty much looks like this. Not bad. That's the air pocket. Notice how I'm hovering. And I don't move the bag up and down, I just squeeze and let the batter kind of go out to where I want it to. And then when I get it to the right size, I stop the pressure and cut the bag. Try not to lift up, that creates a tip, and those are hard to dissipate. If you cut sideways, those little marks will eventually dissipate, even if I have to shake my pan a little bit. Okay? So you're going to just do as many as will fit. And they don't spread very much, so you don't have to worry about going really far apart from them. Keep your tip straight up and down. A lot of people will pipe at an angle, and then you'll notice as your macarons rise in the oven, they rise at an angle. So straight up and down makes them rise nice and straight, with a nice, beautiful little foot underneath. All right, so that is that. So once you guys are done piping, these need to sit for about 20 minutes. They dry out a little on top, makes them come out of the oven a little nicer, a little bit more beautiful on top and dry on the bottom. So we're going to just load up a rolling rack, or we find one, and I will cart them up to 302. I'm going to bake them at 300 in a convection oven for approximately 10 minutes. I may rotate at some point depending on the ovens, but that's pretty much how I like to bake them. You can bake them in a deck oven at 290, about 8 minutes, rotate, and then another 8 minutes. But with these deck ovens and the vents and stuff, I don't know, they confuse me. So I try not to bother because it doesn't really ever work for me. So that's what we're going to do. All right?